Hey basketball guys, we have news. Let's go to more news from the Golden State Warriors, but before that, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave your like. Stephen Curry is still at his peak, even though he is facing injury problems. He is the reference of the Warriors squad and the franchise's most important player. For this reason, the Warriors want Stephen Curry to have one more championship before retiring. The squad is of good quality, but there is a lack of explosion in crucial moments of the game. And to improve the squad, it will be necessary to hire players. Rumors, trade between three teams brings great player to the Warriors. Golden State need to find Stephen Curry a reliable backcourt partner. The loss of DeAnthony Melton is proving even more problematic for the Golden State Warriors than initially thought, with the franchise having gone 3-4 since the 26-year-old guard suffered a season-ending ACL injury against the Dallas Mavericks earlier in the month. Lindy Waters III has started every game since Melton's devastating injury, but there's a genuine question on who the Warriors' starting two-guard will become playoff time should they make it. Warriors reunite with Donte DiVincenzo in three-team trade pitch. If the Warriors do end up scouring the trade market for a new backcourt teammate for Stephen Curry, they could certainly do worse than exploring a reunion with former guard Donte DiVincenzo. Despite only being traded from the New York Knicks to the Minnesota Timberwolves just prior to the season, Brett Siegel of Clutch Points reported last week that DiVincenzo is being viewed as a possible trade candidate. That speculation has since cooled following another report from Mark Stein, but there's plenty of time between now and the trade deadline, not to mention DiVincenzo was benched from midway through the third quarter in Tuesday's loss to the Houston Rockets. DiVincenzo makes sense for Golden State not just because he's accustomed with the organization, but because he's on a very similar salary to Melton. The Timberwolves aren't going to have interest in taking on an injured Melton, so let's explore a three-team trade that could benefit all involved. Golden State Warriors receive Donte DiVincenzo. Minnesota Timberwolves receive Chris Paul, 2026 second-round pick. San Antonio Spurs receive DeAnthony Melton, top 10 protected 2025 first-round pick, GSW. In a normal scenario, giving up Melton and 2 picks for DiVincenzo wouldn't be worth it. In fact, you could argue that Golden State currently have the better player. However, Melton's injured and therefore this isn't a normal scenario, meaning the Warriors will have to give up assets to get anything of value in return. DiVincenzo may be having a poor start to his tenure in Minnesota, but he did make the third most threes in the league last season after drilling near 40% of his triples with the Warriors the year before. The 27-year-old would be better than any of Golden State's current options and is on an incredibly team-friendly contract, both under the assumption that he returns to somewhere near his best. Mike Conley's recent injury has allowed for the emergence of Rob Dillingham, yet it remains to be seen whether the rookie guard will develop enough to be considered a viable rotation piece come playoff time. Given that and the fact there's no certainty of a 37-year-old Conley being fit and firing by the playoffs, the Timberwolves may want to solidify their questionable point guard depth. Paul is still defying age to a degree, with the 39-year-old putting up 10.6 points and 8.2 assists on 37.1% three-point shooting with the San Antonio Spurs. Minnesota also shaves some money off their luxury tax bill as a second apron team, but it's unlikely they agree to this deal unless DiVincenzo's really discontent and wants out of his new home. Speaking of the Spurs, they're probably not going to have interest in trading Paul unless they're out of the playoff picture by the deadline. His leadership and experience has been incredibly valuable to the franchise and may be worth more than obtaining a top 10 protected first-round pick, yet that seems like good value if they do entertain trading the 12x All-Star. Warriors' young player gets ironic incentive in new contract. This is an appropriate incentive for Moses. While the Golden State Warriors were unable to come to terms on a new contract extension for Jonathan Kuminga, they were able to agree on a new deal for fellow fourth-year lottery pick Moses Moody. Despite an often uncertain role and playing opportunity throughout his first 3 years in the league, the Warriors were comfortable in giving Moody a 3-year, $39 million extension that kicks in next season. Moses Moody has a trio of incentives in his new contract with the Warriors. Moody may not quite make the $13 million per year average that was initially scheduled though, with John Hollinger of The Athletic reporting on Monday that the 22-year-old actually has an average of $500,000 per season in unlikely incentives. The Athletic has learned how the incentive pays out. Moody gets it if he achieves all 3 of the following markers: playing at least 1,600 minutes, attempting at least 9 three-pointers per 100 possessions and achieving at least 60% true shooting. Given the constant storyline of Moody's playing time over his first 3 seasons, and even so far entering his 4th, the fact there's an incentive tied to minutes played is rather ironic. Playing 1,600 minutes would equate to averaging 19.5 minutes across all 82 games, or averaging 21.3 minutes over 75 games if we want to account for some missed games. Moody recently started 3 games in the absence of superstar guard Stephen Curry, but was pushed back to the bench for Monday's win against the Washington Wizards at Capital One Arena. The former 14th overall pick is currently averaging 17.8 minutes per game, ranked 8th on the team, not that it factors into this year's contract anyway. Moody is currently averaging well over 12.5 three-point attempts per 100 possessions, suggesting that 9 is a more than achievable target to reach in the coming seasons. His current true shooting percentage is also well in excess of 60%, with Moody currently at 66.9% true shooting thanks to 50% shooting from the floor, 48.5% from three-point range, and 66.7% from the free throw line. Each of the 3 incentives are more than achievable in themselves, but perhaps reaching all 3 together could be difficult. Either way, there's a lot to play out before the contract actually begins next year. Moody is currently the only Warrior fully under contract until the end of the 2027-28 season. New teammate Buddy Hield does have a deal until the end of that season, but the 3rd and 4th seasons involve both non-guarantees and a player option. Late-game offense is becoming a familiar for the Warriors. After surrendering 17 and 18 points leads in their last 2 games against the San Antonio Spurs and Brooklyn Nets, the Warrior offense stagnated for a 3rd straight game down the stretch. They went 9 straight possessions without a point late in the 4th quarter, and while their defense still gave them a shot to tie or win the game at the end, Andrew Wiggins' rushed layup attempt was never close. As disappointing as the final minutes were, Golden State will clearly look back to the first quarter as the period in which they lost the game. Wiggins had all of the Warriors' first 9 points, including a 4-point play, to open up a 9-6 lead, but the Thunder dominated the remainder of the quarter to find themselves up 39-23. No Curry meant first legitimate rotation minutes for Pat Spencer, with the two-way contracted guard providing a spark off the bench early in the second quarter. Jonathan Kuminga responded from a poor opening period with 10 second-quarter points, including a vicious slam that left Thunder star Jalen Williams dazed and out for the rest of the game. After missing the last 2 games through illness, Kuminga then added another 9 points in the third as Golden State found themselves within 1. With Shai Gilgeous-Alexander becoming tiresome and Isaiah Hartenstein in foul trouble, a surprise comeback win appeared on the cards for the Warriors. Unfortunately, they were unable to capitalize on the opportunity, with Wiggins and Kuminga failing to execute with extra reliance placed upon them in Curry's absence. Both had their moments but were rather inefficient. Kuminga went scoreless in the fourth and finished with 19 points and 4 rebounds on 8 of 21 shooting, while Wiggins had just 5 after the first quarter and recording 16 points on 4 of 17 from the field. It was that type of game with 2 elite defenses taking charge in the second half. The Warriors did get 17 points from Buddy Hield in a slight bounce-back performance, while Kyle Anderson also added 10 off the bench. Draymond Green tried to will his team to victory purely on the defensive end, making some huge plays while finishing with 10 points, 13 rebounds, and 7 assists. Brandon Podziemski had 12 points, 8 rebounds, and 5 assists as the starting point guard, but shot just 4 of 10 from the floor and 1 of 4 from 3. The Warriors shot 35.4% as a team and 32% from three-point range, and will now desperately be hoping to get Curry back for Saturday's showdown against Kevin Durant and the Suns in Phoenix.